Hey everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Elden Dogs, where we are being invaded by Square Table Gaming. Cue the invasion sound. The podcast has a visitor. I am, of course, Saransbach. I am Brad, and yes, Square Table Gaming. Zach, you want us to tell us a little bit about yourself for people that might not know?
Yeah, sure thing. My name is Zach. I go by Lore Master Zach in the Discord, which I promise is not a name that I gave to myself. I've been making Elden Ring content since a couple months after the game dropped, and I've been a FromSoft fan since Demon Souls.
Yeah, in a world where there is so much content online for Elden Ring, so many creators, it's always fun to talk with someone that I find your content just really great, really fascinating. It's not too like long-winded. It gets to the point, and I think you and I kind of have a similar approach to item descriptions. I don't know, the way that you kind of set your videos up, because there was a period where I was, once the DLC drops, that's when I found your channel, and I was just assimilating all of these new content creators, and yours was one that I stuck with, and I found myself listening to for about 5 hours straight. So it's
wow.
It's really nice to have you here. I was on a job site. I'm an electrician sometimes, and I was by myself, and I had my earbuds in, and it was just I really was vibing with your stuff.
I love whenever I hear that from people, like when we get comments about like, hey, like I just listened to like the whole playlist, or like the reason I started making compilations of the videos is because I got comments from people saying like, yeah, like I fall asleep to your stuff, and like, yeah, I listen to it while I'm at work. I'm like, oh, okay, so all right, I'll just take what I've got and make something that goes on for like 5-6 hours.
Yeah,
then people have something to listen to.
Do those videos do like better than some of like the individual ones? Do you find like people stay there for the whole thing?
There's some pretty crazy retention going on with some of them. The first one I ever put out, still the top performer. It's the only video on the channel that's ever broken 1 million views. And like I think the retention on there is something like 4 hours on average.
Yeah,
and it's like a 12-hour video, so it's pretty wild. People definitely just let it run while they're sleeping, and that's fine.
Well, that's kind of what it's for. You do have a voice that's easy to listen to, so that's a good thing as well. It's not Gilbert Gottfried for 5 hours.
It might be a little bit rougher right now. I just came back from vacation with my family, and I'm supposed to be recording a script tonight. That's not going to happen. I need like another day to recover.
Yeah, down at the Cerulean Coast for a couple days.
Exactly. We visited the mouse and gave him a lot of our money, but my 4-year-old is very happy.
Oh, that's a whole nother kind of undead monster.
Oh yeah.
So you've been doing content creation with Square Table Gaming since around Elden Ring came out, you said, right? A couple months after?
Yeah, it was actually, I want to say maybe a month after the game came out when I made my first video on it. And I had already, like, I'd been listening to content creators make videos about, like, Bloodborne and Dark Souls for years. I think the guy who made me want to try it was actually My Name is Byfe, because I was really into Destiny, and I loved listening to him, like, break down the lore of the game that I wasn't digging up myself.
Man, I don't think you had to go digging for Destiny lore pretty hard.
No, but like I got so into the shooting and just like the gameplay of it that I would just be like, all right, cool. I'm just going to listen to Byfe explain everything to me.
Yeah, Elden Ring is and from software games at large are super interesting in that if you don't want story, it's possible just to fall completely through the story and just be hitting monsters.
Exactly. But like I was blown away by the fact that there weren't a lot of people really getting into Elden Ring when it first came out. Like, Vadi didn't put anything out for Elden Ring until months after the game came out, and some of the other creators out there it was really sparse content. So it was like I really love the Crucible Knights, and I want to talk about these guys. Let's see if anybody wants to hear about it.
How does the channel work? Because you run like a part of the channel, right?
I run almost all of it.
Almost all of it.
Almost all of it. I do all the scripts, all the research, the voiceovers, the editing, gameplay capture. My brother, my older brother, is our dedicated artist, so he does all of the art and all of the animation.
Well, give him my regards. Fantastic art. I was wondering that.
Yeah, he goes by Geez, Geez on YouTube, and I have been my entire life I have wanted to work on a creative project with my older brother, and when the channel started taking off, I asked him to do some thumbnails for it, and like that was it. This is like the thing that we do together now.
Yeah, we kind of were just on a lark, like, hey, we should talk about Elden Ring for a couple episodes on one of our other podcasts, and then we said maybe a little bit more long form, and then we said, 20 episodes, that'd be crazy, right? And, and I have my like rough estimate now, and it's looking at about 70 episodes over an hour each, and it's a game that really warrants discussion, though.
It really does.
It's very multifaceted, complex, and obtuse in a lot of ways. I think maybe the reason like there was an absence of content creators initially is it's really overwhelming. Just to even get like a broad understanding of what's happening requires quite a bit of effort.
You're absolutely right, and I think what like you mentioned earlier, like the style of my videos, I think that's why they are the way they are, because to get into like the nitty gritty of this world and like how it's built and all of the players in it and how they all come together is wildly complicated. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to break down the more minor enemies and characters that we encountered. And I wanted to make sure that it was kind of like that there was like a running bestiary essentially.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a fun approach. I mean, every enemy deserves at least, a 10 minute, 20 minute discussion. What is your approach to lining up your lore for an episode? Like, all right, you're going to talk about this certain enemy. Where do you start?
Item descriptions, flat out. That's the beginning of anything I work on. It was easier at the beginning because none of us really knew what we were talking about yet. Nobody had connected dots, really. We were just kind of, everybody out there making content was just trying to talk about what they liked. So it was like, okay, here's all the item descriptions. Here's the best way I can see to weave them together. And there you go. There's a video. And nowadays it's more, okay, here's all the item descriptions. How does this interact with everything else we know about the world at this point? And is the game lying to me or not? Is like the big question you have to ask every time you read any bit of lore. But it still comes back to just putting the item descriptions in front of me and making sure that they're laid out in a way that tells the character's story or the enemy's story, and then trying to figure out if anyone else overlaps with that.
Yeah. So you line up all of your item descriptions. You kind of like make a crime map where you're trying to make all these connections up there. And
exactly.
Yeah. Do you also like to look into like context clues as well? Because that's always a fuzzy thing where I get to points on episodes where there's just a feeling when I see that Vyke is in a jail up there on the mountaintops of the giants. My gut is all of a sudden saying he's locking himself up in the jail to prevent him from doing potential harm, and that's me, maybe taking a leap. Is there any leaps that you are afraid to take that you kind of maybe feel might be something going on?
I used to feel that way. I was always very cautious in the beginning of like not putting too much of my own, this is what I think is actually happening into the videos, because I wanted to keep it as close to what could be considered fact as possible. And my community very vehemently told me, like, don't do that. Just like, no, go, like run with it. Do it. Like, if you think this makes sense, tell us, and we'll disagree with you if we disagree, and that's fine. We'll just have that conversation in the comments. So now I don't really feel that way anymore. I do look for context clues depending on what I'm talking about. I think Vyke is a really good example, because that same point that you made about him locking himself in the jail, I see that completely differently. Like,
yeah,
I take the idea that we do fight an invasion form of Vyke that is completely taken by the Frenzied Flame, and then this other form of Vyke exists inside this Everjail. And my thought is, okay, well, we also have artwork of Vyke right on the front of the game box. Does that mean anything? Maybe not. But what if it did? Maybe if it was maybe this depiction was important to back in the day when they were first writing the story of the game. So what if he's not the person who threw him in that? Maybe he didn't put himself there. What if he was thrown in there by someone to quell the Frenzied Flame? Because an Everjail separates you from the influence of outer gods.
Yeah.
So by being in there, he's separated from the flame, which is why when we fight him there, he can use his dragon. He uses his dragon attacks. Who would want to put him there, and who would be able to put him there, because it lies beyond Landell? And my conclusion was like, so if someone else did it, it had to have been Morgott and his people.
I love having so many different possibilities for how the story can come together too. I like that, and there's not like one specific thing that necessarily happens, unless you're holding, the Miyazaki Bible that
right.
says this was the original sin. That's one thing that I've really enjoyed speculating on the DLC is Marika, the shaman village, and it's so funny to me that, like, I think a lot of the important clues as to what's happening in the DLC is buried in the trailer for the game that you never see in game. It's so funny to me.
Oh, absolutely. But like, I also get worried about, like, so less so with the DLC, because the game's been out, it's been written, everything already exists. But I get worried about extrapolating from that sometimes, because if we go back to the original trailers for Elden Ring, there's stuff there that doesn't make any sense now. Like Mohg holding Miquella and like ripping him from the cocoon. We know that never happened. We have proof right in front of us in the game that Mohg never got him out of the cocoon. So that image means nothing now. The snake eating Rykard's face being so small also doesn't make sense. I love to go back and like theorize based on those things, but also how much of that has been changed by the time we actually have the game in our hands.
Yeah, and your content's very much based on what is, in the game. Have you done any looking into like cut content or anything that was removed from the game?
Yes, a couple times. I've mostly avoided it, but back in the day, pretty early on in the channel, I made a video about Saint Trina based on the cut content and what I thought Trina's whole deal was.
Yeah.
And going through the DLC was the most vindicating thing in the world, because I came so close to nailing it with that video.
Yeah. Saint Trina was a very fun mystery to try and pick apart before the DLC. It's great when there's only 2 or 3 items that describe an entire like area or other character, like the regalia of Aeacade. I'm like, what the fuck's going on with this flying sword culture? And we don't know anything about it. And all of a sudden,
only connected to Elimer,
who is like an evil like Batman supervillain. Who's, my theory is, going out and hunting the merchants. But
yes, definitely.
Yeah, I headcanon's great stuff, and yeah, I love the cut content. I like that there's the data miners that actually go in and pick apart all of the old audio. You can hear like some of the original voice acting and all that. With the DLC, what were you speculating the focus would be before it came out? Were you thinking it was going to be Miquella the show?
I was pretty sure it was going to be Miquella. I was really taken aback by people who would look at that one image that we got and be like, "That's a young Marika," and I'm like, "Guys, no, we have really? We have so many depictions of Miquella and like statues and things like that. Like, and they all lined up one for one. The one thing that the DLC did not give me that I am still upset that I didn't get was any kind of connection between Miquella and Torrent. Like,
other than the one picture.
Other than the one picture. Like,
it's crazy.
I'm thrown by why they would give us that and then just never say a word about it. And I think a lot of the DLC didn't get to us. I think they had a lot of irons in the fire when they were working on it, and it didn't quite make it to the end product.
Yeah, I kind of had that feeling a little bit with the non-ending, where I expected some sort of a pop at the end, but that like quiet scene with what is it, just like a chair and Miquella talking, it seems very sparse, but I don't know, it gets the point across, and who am I to question Miyazaki?
Right. I think I'm in a minority for like truly enjoying that ending. But I think I only feel that way because of how much I like it thematically. Because Miquella's whole deal was nescience and nothing he ever like pursued coming to fruition. And the fact that his entire plan after this epic battle goes out with a whimper is very thematically on point. Yeah. And I feel like that might have been lost if there was more fanfare. I would have enjoyed it, but like I get why it was like that, and I don't hate it.
And the real fanfare is dying to Radahn 200 times. That's about as big of an explosion as you could want.
I'm still in the camp that it should have been Godwyn. I get why they went with Radahn, and I love the way it was woven together. But it should have been Godwyn.
Yeah. I really liked the way Godwyn's story kind of wrapped up at the end. I wasn't a huge fan of the twin brothers D, but Godwyn's still around. That guy just seeps into everywhere.
Yeah, but like they very clearly set up a connection between him and Miquella. Like, yeah, some level of strong brotherhood between them, and then they just did nothing with it.
I also think a little bit that we like to talk about all these mysteries and we have our own theories and our speculations, but if Miyazaki was to just release a 20-part Twitter thread that says, Miquella and Ronnie did this to orchestrate the Night of Black Knives, the Glomide Queen is this person, I don't know if it would, I think it would take the wind out of our sails a little bit if all of a sudden all of the answers were just given to us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question.
The mystery is kind of what makes it good, and I imagine, Miyazaki and Martin, they probably just have a list of what happened, and then they just pluck out 20 pieces of information that kind of can fuel most of the story. What's going on? Yeah, I'm a big George R. R. Martin fan as well.
I would love to just see his what he wrote, because I know it wouldn't ruin anything. I don't think if we were able to see what George R. R. Martin wrote, because he just did backstory. He didn't get into, at least from what he said, he didn't get into all of the deeper connections that we kind of see post Shattering. Yeah. So I would love to read what he wrote for what that world was like pre-Shattering.
Yeah. Do you have a certain area in the DLC that is just your favorite, richest lore area you like to go back to?
Probably the Bonnie Village.
Nice.
The entire area around the Bonnie Village. Yeah. It's so gross. I love it.
Dude,
the
we were so
of the horn scent. Oh man.
We were so excited to talking about jars before the DLC came out. We so obsessed with how cool they were, and then the first time you're creeping through the jail underneath Ballarat and the jar crawls out, I was crapping my pants at how cool it was.
It was so disturbing on a level that Elden Ring had not been for me up to that point. It was great. The flesh monster that very clearly looked like a woman, turned into this thing, vaguely looking like Marika. I was like, oh shit, what did I just walk into? What is this?
Man, just old school body horror stuff. And it's, it's a little bit like exactly what I thought was going on in there, but to actually just see it crawl out of the jar for the first time. Bonnie Village is super integral to, I think, the story of America. I could just go run around out there and look at that snake skin and that tree where you find the gesture. I think that we have the episode coming up soon where we're going to talk about the Shaman Village and Finger Ruins. So I'm just starting to do some of my extra research into that. And I imagine Marika escaping the Bonnie Village and running out to that tree. And the snakeskin being there, I think, is definitely not a coincidence either. I think part of the original sin happens there, but there's a lot of points to we don't know what happened in between this two. The Gates of Divinity. It's fun to there's a lot of cool possibilities.
Yeah, I would love to see if there's actually a tie that brings Marika to the Bonnie Village, because from what we know, we know that she was raised in the Shaman Village, because the braid tells us how she went back to her home and, said the prayer. Then that's why there's that tiny little minor Erd tree there. But the atrocities that happened in the Bonnie Village, she had to have been aware of them. She had to have been I guess what I'm getting at is, why did this take place in the Bonnie Village, and how was the Shaman Village somehow kept clear of all of that? Or was it not? And the Shaman Village only looks the way it does because Marika visited it before she left.
Yeah, it's the Shaman Village. It's so interesting when you finally get there for the first time, and there's the light music, like the theme song playing in the background and birds flying, and you can definitely feel that this is the only untouched, protected place in all of the lands between. Strange, calming presence there.
And there's the tree mother, or I don't think that's what she's called. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the woman in the tree, again, looking like Marika, who is, I believe, referred to as a grandmother.
The golden braid was like an offering to the grandmother.
Yes.
Did you? We talk a lot about the lore. What was some of the new gameplay changes in Shadow of the Erd Tree that you really enjoyed? Did you like the new systems?
So I can't really say I felt strongly about them in general. I understood the need for kind of weakening us before running into the... Actually, you know what? No, I take it back. I don't understand the need for weakening us, because those bosses were hard as hell. No, I think if we went in there level 250, 256, thinking, oh, we're going to kick ass, those bosses still would have trounced us at the beginning. I guess I can say they didn't inhibit me from enjoying anything, so I'm kind of indifferent to it. And I never really utilized the new abilities given to Torrent, because I spent as little time in the overworld as possible, because the overworld was so confusing.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's old school world design. I don't know. I was getting feelings of Dark Souls with the interconnectedness, despite it being, so spread out. You can't replace that feeling the first time you get into a new area in a FromSoft game. That is it's a special experience. Do you prefer kind of the more open world approach to Elden Ring, or do you prefer kind of more of a more structured Bloodborne, Dark Souls experience?
I think actually Shadow of the Erd Tree made me come back around to appreciating Bloodborne and Dark Souls more, in terms of having that the interconnected world that always circles back in on itself. I didn't realize how much I missed that until I was trying to figure out whether or not this site of grace was on top of a mountain or below a mountain. because the map didn't go up upper ground and lower ground like it did in the base game. And I really found myself missing the interconnectedness of a Bloodborne while I was playing Shadow of the Erdtree. Yeah.
The maps are very non-communicative in these games.
And I didn't feel that way too much when it came to the base game of Elden Ring. For the most part, I had a pretty good handle on where I was going to be when I went to a Site of Grace. But until I was at the point where I'd played it, 300 times because I'm getting footage for the next video, it took me a really long time to understand, okay, this Site of Grace is going to put me here, but what I see on the map is not where I'm going to be. What I see on the map is the top of this area, and where I'm going to be when I go to this Grace is well below that area, underneath of a cliff. Like, that kept throwing me.
Yeah, it reminds me of above the village of the Albinarics in the base game. I looked up at that plateau for 10 hours, and I just kept coming back, and I was like, what am I missing here? I'm pretty hard-headed. I don't like to give in and just go to the guide until I've tried all other options. But the problem is with Shadow of the Erdtree is I feel like sometimes they don't know how to get you to the Abyssal Woods. Like, there's no way. So throw in a coffin.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, the coffins were kind of egregious this time around.
That was the only thing that I gave in to get. Like, I had to go to a guide because surprisingly that the shared online experience worked for me with St. Trina, where you had to talk multiple times to her, and I had a message in front of there that said try and try, then try and try, something like that. And I'm like, all right, I'll just kill myself 4 times in a row and we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, I ran into the same situation with Trina where it was just like, no, just keep trying. I was like, okay, yeah, there's something going on here. There wouldn't be all these messages down if it was just going to kill me over and over again. Or at least the messages wouldn't be rated so well.
Right.
Yeah.
How many times have you gone through the DLC?
Like 10. But like not on New Game 10 or anything, but I capture all my footage on my PS5. So I have to keep a file backed up on my New Game Plus for whenever I have to run through to get what I need for the next video. So yeah, I've been through the DLC like 10 times.
My biggest project, I've gone through 4 times altogether, but my biggest project is having one save that has one of every item plus like their alterations. And some of that farming to get stuff was pretty brutal. Some of the imp heads were rare, and I think the DLC, the toughest item for me to find in there was farming the Golem Fist up north in one of the foundries. There's like those 2 golems that are right by each other, and it's the only place to get that drop in the game. But I wanted to have a save file where it had every single weapon, all of the armors, all of the items, so I could look through them. Although Extra Life could also just kind of handle that for me too.
Yeah, I need to have them for the little bits where when I do the item descriptions, I like scroll down the actual item with the text. So I need to have them for things like that. But for reference, the Elden Ring books of knowledge have been amazing.
Yeah, I just got the 3rd one the other day, and I'm loving it so far. Now, I know some people on Reddit like to say that those aren't canon, but I consider those holy texts myself.
Yeah, I mean, they're directly from the team. Like, everything has been signed off on. So arguing with any of it is kind of like, I don't really understand why you would, because it has to go through the creator to get it published.
It's interesting. It's also like the first confirmations we have of some enemy names, like the Catacombs Conjurer, which is those conjurers with the little dead babies on them. They were referred to online as putrescent sorcerers for a long time, but that was just because of like an in-text, like unseen name in the background. So to actually get confirmation on some names, I just skimmed the new book of knowledge, so I haven't gotten all the way through it, but it said that the Shadow Tree avatar is actually 3 separate avatars, which I thought was pretty interesting too. Excited to find more stuff like that.
Yeah, same. I think I haven't been through too much of it yet, but the first thing I did with the newest book was read all of the character descriptions for the NPCs because, excuse me, people fought with me about this a lot when I made my video on Celavis. But the description written for Celavis in the Book of Knowledge, to me, basically confirms that he and Pydia are the same person.
That 100%.
Yeah. But, like, there are people who adamantly believe that is not the case. And I wanted to see if there was anything else like that going on where we had, like, kind of some hard facts about these characters written into their descriptions in the books. Did not see as much of that this time around. Definitely more general descriptions of our DLC NPCs. But I am excited to see what else is hiding in there in terms of, like, the enemies.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I think there might be a couple things hidden here or there. Some of the bigger bosses, I like to just go through Midra. Midra gave like a pretty succinct explanation of what happened to him, and to hear the deliberate phrasing for became involved with the flame of frenzy. They're purposefully avoiding certain words, which I think is telling, as well as it kind of illustrates that they don't want us to know certain aspects, but they do want us to be aware of other things. Yeah, and that's got to be signed off on. Do you ever find yourself going down the rabbit hole for translations of item descriptions as well? Because I know certain other countries will have different interpretations of the same lore.
So I've got a guy for that. And when I've got a guy, yeah, when I say I've got a guy for that, I mean Last Protagonist is an incredible creator, and he popped into my Discord one day, and I was already watching his stuff, and every now and again, like since we got friendly, every now and again I'll hit him up and I'll be like, "Hey, I think this is what's going on with this character. Would you mind letting me know what the Japanese text says?" And he'll hit me back if he's not busy.
Nice. Yeah, because even when you get those direct translations online, it's missing, cultural context clues, and you don't understand. Just the way that they phrase things could mean, vast differences in understandings. Yeah,
definitely.
Did you have a favorite new weapon in the DLC?
So my favorite new weapon is one that I don't really use all that much, but I just love the animations for it. Dane's footwork and the dry leaf arts are so ridiculously cool. Impractical in many situations, but very cool. And I've been called out on this a lot in my videos for the footage that I get. That I overly abuse the gravity corkscrew, and I do not care. I love the fact that they let us pull that off of like a remembrance weapon and stick bleed on it. Like, that's insane. Why did you let us do that? I love it.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, I've been messing around a lot more with weapon affinities and buffs and debuffs, so I was drawn to the Great Katana this time, and it's really refreshing being able to like go into any boss and you can just cater your entire weapon that you've been playing with to whatever you need. The Great Katana has definitely been a good friend of mine.
I like the dragon variant, like the dragon Great Katana. I forget what that one's called off the top of my head.
Dragon Hunter's Great Katana, yes. I think.
Yes, it is beautiful.
Sick design, and whenever I'm going up to fight two different dragons at once, the two jagged peak drakes that you fight in that duel, yep, I definitely switch over to that Dragon Hunter Katana for that. And that battle gets me more than it should. Was there any boss in the DLC that you like? What's your favorite boss, and then also which one kicked your ass the most?
Bale and Bale.
Bale and Bale. Speaking of the dragons,
wrecked me, and I love it. That is the best fight in the entire game. The set piece is incredible. The summon is perfect. Like, there is so much gravity given to that fight, especially when you summon Egon. And
That dude crawled
Like-
up a fucking mountain. He gives you his middle finger
Yeah.
and says, "Go fuck this dragon with it."
And when he shows up, like that voice actor, he understood exactly what he was doing. He showed up and he was like, I'm going to play the shit out of this role. It's like, so good.
I read an interview with that voice actor, and he's like, "Yeah, it's kind of a normal day at work. I went in and they told me just to keep going bigger, and then they said go bigger and go bigger, and they had a very specific idea of what they wanted for Bale, and my God, did they deliver."
I think I read that too. Didn't he say like, yeah, when I came out of the studio, I couldn't speak for like 2 days.
Makes sense. There's a lot of anger. Bale, what a stunning design in a world where we've seen every different iteration of a fantasy dragon. To see a motherfucker show up missing 2 wings, a leg, and have 2 heads on his back.
And the lore behind Bale. Oh my God. It was so cool.
It's wild when Florisax is literally just spelling out, this is why Dragon Communion happens. It's because of this. And because Placidusax got mad at Bale. It's so crazy to have stuff that I've been thinking about for over 2 years in like 3 sentences just spelled out to me by a character.
And you know what? I think that it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, if Miyazaki told us these things, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's cool. And it would kind of ruin it for us. But like learning about it in game from Florisax, who also has all of these ties to Placidusax, who like rounds out the entire story of Bale while also telling us about this fight that what took place, still letting us kind of put the pieces together as to, oh, that's why Placidusax is stuck the way he is. That's why he was missing heads. Like, the visual storytelling on top of what we're getting like narrated to us mid-battle. It's so good. It's so cohesive. It comes together in a way that FromSoft games often don't. That whole fight and the entire quest line leading up to it is next level for me. I will argue that is the best quest. That is the best narrative quest line in Elden Ring.
Yeah, as far as like a beginning, middle, end, major climax, it feels very complete. It's interesting how well-defined certain quests, like side quests, if you want to call it that, in the DLC is like heading down south and seeing St. Trina, the Abyssal Woods, and Midra's Manse. Very self-contained, like bits of lore and story that kind of has like an endpoint, which is cool. It's not like it wraps back around. You get to the end of Midra's Manse, and that's kind of that end of that sequence.
I wanted more from Midra, and when I say that, I don't mean that like the fight and the area weren't enough, because they were incredible, but I wanted something to tie it to everything else. I wanted to know how and why the Frenzied Flame was there, and like I really love the idea that the Inquisitors had this ability to like contain the flame. Because you see all those headless corpses outside with the yellow rods in their necks. That's what they were doing. They lopped off their heads and they contained the flame in those bodies so it didn't spread more. Didn't work because that whole area is screwed. But
There's
at least
angry
it's
sheep in that area.
Right. At least it's contained to that area. But like I wanted more of like, why did this happen? What happened here? Like, give me a note. Give me an NPC. Give me more ghosts.
The most I could get out of that story was, I know that there's one room there where you can see some fingerprint stones, like hidden in the back somewhere, like tucked away under some tarps.
Yes.
And to me, that's just like seeking forbidden knowledge. He flew too close to something he probably shouldn't have been, and I don't know. But also, I walk in there and I'm already the Lord of Frenzied Flame. I don't know who this pretender is. Right?
And like, I love that Midra's story could be taken in 2 wildly different directions. I would like to know which one of them is correct, but I've had a lot of people argue about this in comments. Like, is Midra stronger because he endured the flame, or is enduring the flame the reason he wasn't a fully fledged Lord of Frenzied Flame? Was Nanaya's entreaty to him to endure meant to be torture that would make the frenzied lord stronger, or was her entreaty to endure which was considered a curse, because of course it is. Like, you're enduring the frenzied flame. Of course it's going to feel like a curse. But, like, did that keep him from transforming earlier and taking over the world? Like, it's very up in the air.
I believe that the newest book of knowledge uses the wording that the Inquisitors exacted their punishment with the barbed spear through him as a means to prevent the rising of the Lord of the Frenzied Flame.
That's what I thought.
I believe... I'm always hesitant to say something like is 100% because we know how these lorehounds can be. But that's my understanding, is that I think he kind of realized he was going to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, and that was a means to stop it. And then Nanaya told him to keep enduring to prevent it from happening. I feel like my understanding is Midra didn't want it to happen, and Nanaya was on the same page, but also we don't know, and she's just a mysterious lady and we can't see her eyes, so let's speculate, right?
Yeah, and like the biggest speculation wants to paint Nanaya as a villain, and I feel like we don't have nearly enough to do that. Like, a lot of the theorizing for her kind of pushing for Midra to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, I feel like it doesn't hold up with the other information that we have.
Right.
Like, I'm more in line of I'm more on the train of thinking that Nanaya was being manipulated by the flame. Like, she showed up with this torch that, you know, exuded the frenzied flame. Midra is this wise sage who wants to learn what the hell this is. And, you know, they form a relationship together, it's presumably. And he gets to do his research, and then everything goes to shit.
Yeah. Some of my favorite crazy theories. Now, I mean, not theories that I ascribe to. I don't believe them at all. But I love it when someone does like the crackpot stuff, like Nanaya is definitely Shabriri. And another one I like is Midra is Marika's father. And some things that, like, there's no evidence, but I'm like, I'll drink your Kool-Aid, man. I'm going down the rabbit hole with you. Tell me what you think.
Oh, it's fun. It's very fun.
Yeah, I'll bite. I'll listen to anything. And it's weird when you sort of start like formulating your own guesses as to what happens. I sit up at night sometimes thinking like Ronnie and Miquella. I imagine that they were aware of each other's plans and potentially in cahoots with each other, but I feel like Ronnie's involvement in the Night of Black Knives might have stifled some of Miquella's plans. But, you know, it's the kind of fun stuff to just think about, and I like to piece together a narrative and then test it, you know, pull at it, see if it holds up.
You know what's funny is I always thought the exact same thing, because, I mean, presumably Torrent came from Miquella, and Torrent's ring was entrusted to Ronnie, so they must have had some kind of relationship together. Excuse me. And before it was revealed that Radahn was the promised consort, I feel like it would have made so much more sense if it was Godwyn and Ronnie's plans kind of screwed over Miquella a bit. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Which would make sense. Because, well, I guess technically also, it depends how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go. But like, I'm fully on board the idea that Ronnie's plan was also Marika's plan, and that they were in on all of this together. Because how else were you gonna steal a piece of destined death from Malekith, who sleeps in Queen Marika's bedchamber, like, and not have her aware that that's happening? It makes no sense whatsoever.
I think, though, the plan was not to kill Godwyn. That was Ronnie's decision, and that's what sent Marika overboard after that happened. I think something changed, perhaps.
I'm not sure. I feel like Marika at this point already knew that her godhood wasn't what she signed up for, especially in, you know, her relationship with Radagon. And the pictures that are painted of Marika, in my opinion, are very much that of a person who would not have too much of an issue sacrificing one of her children to break her own shackles.
Yeah. I love so much. I think my favorite bit of lore in the DLC is Ymir and Metter. The fact that Ymir pretty much spells out like we're just born out of the cosmos, and the mother of all fingers hasn't spoken with our god in a long time, and she's just making shit up down there.
Yep.
I'm like, it's a little too good of a parallel to, false prophets just bending religion to what they need. Metter is such a beautiful boss fight. It reminded me a little bit of the vacuous spider in
Rom.
Bloodborne.
Same. That was my first thought when I showed up there. I was like, oh, am I fighting Rom again?
So Elden Ring and the DLC are concluded. There's no more DLC.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced.
We're not going to accept this answer.
They said it, and I don't believe you. I do not believe them.
I heard that there was like some crazy number of games in development by FromSoft right now.
That's true. Yeah.
Do you want an Elden Ring 2? Do you think that where would it take place? What would you want to see? It's kind of a big puzzle trying to figure out where they would take it next.
I kind of would like to see an Elden Ring 2 because I feel like there's enough breadcrumbs left to follow. There is what happens to the lands between, regardless of what age is chosen after Godwyn has festered throughout all of it. That also brings up the question of, will Saint Trina come back? Like, yes, we see her wilt away at the end of her quest line, but Saint Trina is treated like a flower. So why couldn't she propagate again? Will Trina become a larger force in the lands between through, propagating across the land? Metter, we don't kill her. When we finish that battle, nothing is slain. Off. She runs away.
Yep.
The Greater Will abandon the lands between. What happens if it ever decides to take a look back on what it left behind?
They could also just go to a completely different world, too. All of these gods can be taking place elsewhere. You could be a completely different planet at a different time frame with the gods affecting things in different ways. Fuck, they could take it to like a science fiction universe and still have the Mother of Blood involved.
Yeah, I mean, if you run with Ronnie's ending, you're exploring the cosmos. We could end up anywhere.
Right. Now, there's also been some rumors, mostly George R. R. Martin making cheeky posts and like winking at us about an Elden Ring potential like anime or adaptation. Have you heard anything about that?
I mean, I've heard what's been talked about. Would I love to see an Elden Ring show in like the style of Game of Thrones that just showed us the world pre-shattering? Yeah, I would eat that shit up. That would be incredible. Yeah, give it to me now.
Live action seems like a tall order though for this to try and like make it to make Godric look the way I expect him to in live action would be tough.
Godric, but if we're talking about a time in the lands between before any of this went down, Godric wouldn't have started grafting himself yet.
We could have seen his, like, there could be Godric's first graft. It could be him, like, getting ready for his first date.
Godric might not even be alive yet, because he's a far offshoot of Godwyn's bloodline.
Do we know who Godwyn was potentially with Lady Dragon? Do you think Godric might be descended from a lady dragon too?
I do not. I think Godric is descended from common folk.
Okay.
I think Godwyn was the Fabio of the lands between back in the day.
A little bit of a playboy.
Definitely. And I think we can get that through Kenneth Height's dialogue. Talking about, Godric the Grafted being nothing more than a huffed up country bumpkin.
Yeah.
And also that plays into kind of what we were talking about before, my thoughts on Marika maybe having less love for Godwyn than, we previously thought. If Godwyn's out there diluting the blood of the Golden Order, there's another good reason for her to be like, yeah, he's the one that it's okay to sacrifice. Go for it, Ronnie. Because we also, Kenneth Height claims to have a claim to the throne himself. He ultimately decides that his claim isn't strong enough, but to me, this speaks to Godwin maybe having a bit of fun in his time and kind of spreading out the nobility.
Anyone who's got the Golden as their last name probably had a bit of fun.
Yeah.
I imagine Kenneth Haidt might be more descended from like the Stormlord or whoever that is. I didn't get like America descendant vibes from Kenneth.
I'm not sure. He's got the golden eyes. He's got the golden hair. At least as far as that's concerned. The Stormlord, I think, traces back to the Land of Shadow. And
okay,
if that's the case, I don't think he would see himself as having a rightful claim. And I think it's why he picks Nefeli Lu. Because she has the strongest claim, because she's part of the Lu tribe going back to Godfrey.
Speaking of Nefeli Lu, what was the most difficult decision you had to make in Elden Ring for the sake of getting an item?
I'm a terrible person to ask this question because I would only take the routes that would keep people alive.
but you need all the items, right? You want to get Nefeli Lu's spirit ashes at some point.
Sure, but after that first run, it's like, okay, now I'm just playing a video game.
Right. Yes. I'm very sorry to kill Sir Ansbach, but he does have a very epic final battle when I do ultimately decide to take him down.
I take it back. It was very heartbreaking to fight Ansbach no matter how many times I went through that DLC.
Such a good dude.
I love that guy.
Okay, but if they were to make an adaptation like anime or live action, you would hope to be like Shattering era?
Yeah, I want backstory. I don't want to retread things that we've already seen. And I don't know. I don't know if I should talk about this or not. Actually, it's funny. We talked before about like, hey, if there's things we want to cut, but like, something my brother and I have been working on, and we're really trying to do something with it, is creating animations of pieces of Elden Ring story that we didn't get to see.
Nice.
And I know there's already a team out there making essentially an Elden Ring fan anime, and it looks incredible. But this is something that he and I have been working on for like 6 months now, where we would take scenes from like things that we know happened but couldn't have seen. For instance, a conversation between Saint Trina and Miquella before Miquella pushed her into the chasm, or
Elmer on the chopping block at the Shaded Castle. That shit
exactly.
That I'd love to see the sword rise up and start executing people.
Yes, like him kind of worming his way out of his execution and then throwing an Ash of War on the Moray sword and using it to just murder everyone in the room and exiling Malay Moray from his own castle. How badass would that be? But like that only lends itself to shorts, you know what I mean? It could lend itself to like a 5-minute video, but it's not going to lend itself to a series. And those are the two things I would want to see. Things that the game didn't give me that I know happened, and things that happened well before the game ever took place.
Yeah. Yep. The super early stuff I find all so fascinating. Don't want to take up too much of your time. Super happy, super grateful that you joined us today. I've been a longtime fan of yours. Before we close out, though, besides Elden Ring, which you and I have both talked about so much, we've talked so much. I'm 70 hours talking, and I've almost talked as much as played the game. Besides Elden Ring, what other story, game, book series, is there another one you would like to spend this much time delving into the world building and lore?
So I really hope this series keeps up. I want to dig so deep into the lore of Lies of P and whatever game comes next.
Yeah.
I love that game.
You started that a
so
little
much.
bit, haven't you?
I did a few videos on it, and unfortunately the algorithm decided if I make anything other than Elden Ring, it's just not going to show it to people.
It's weird how the algorithm makes these decisions. We live and die by it,
really
man.
does.
Yeah.
And even I was like, my audience is interested in Lies of P. It's like, yeah, we don't care. We're not showing your video. I would love to be unburdened from everything else and to just talk and write about Lies of P. I would also love to dive into Silent Hill, but there are already creators who are incredible at dissecting the entire Silent Hill series, and I listen to all of them.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like that would be kind of needless for me to jump into. Not sure what else. There was a series of books that I just started reading, and I can't for the life of me think of it off the top of my head. But, yeah.
Well, luckily, we have enough Elden Ring we can talk about for another... we're going to do another 20 podcasts, but I imagine you probably have another 50 videos if you want to. More than that, probably.
Yeah, like I am honestly blown away that I am still finding topics. I mean, right now I'm running through all of like Let Us followers. I'm working on a video about Dane right now, but like there is so much to explore. I'm blown away that it's made it to this point, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. That said, I would love to do more of this, just like talking about the game. Yeah. Because I gotta tell you, man, in my day-to-day life, I do not get to do this, and it feels so good.
If you'd like, we could have you on for one of our regular episodes. That's not an interview. We have a couple upcoming ones. One is Shadowview, which is like the church district, and then to the Shaman Village, the Finger Ruins. It'd be fun to have you on for that one if you want to come back for a regular style episode.
That would be fun, because I got some feelings about the Finger Ruins and Midra in general. Spoiler alert, I'm almost 100% certain that the Finger Creepers are a retcon, but outside of that...
I do wonder sometimes. Sometimes I think that, all right, we just need some enemies here, and we're going to put 2 of these abductor virgins out here, and it's not because Rykard's involved, but maybe he is, and maybe we should talk about it for 10 hours,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on if that works out. But other than that, thank you so much for your time today, Zach. I've been listening to your content for a long time, and I really appreciate your approach to the lore.
No, this was so much fun. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And if our listeners wanted to find your content, where would they find it?
Square Table Gaming on YouTube. You can also find us on Twitter and every now and on Instagram. And if I remember, every now and again we make a Facebook post, but I usually don't remember that.
I'm on a sunk cost fallacy at this point for Facebook and Threads. I still post there. I don't. And Twitter is sometimes working, and then YouTube out of nowhere, because our podcasts automatically go to YouTube, and all of a sudden there's one that just gets like a major uptick, and I'm like, why? What did we do? It's so bizarre how that works to me.
YouTube is back to being the Wild West these days. It really is. Like, nobody knows what's going to happen with anything they upload anymore, and like, there's so much attention being given to small creators, which is a good thing, but like only until they grow, and then once they grow, boom, everything drops off.
It's fun though, and we're gonna keep talking about Elden Ring until we've talked about all of it. So it's gonna last forever. Thanks again so much, Zach, and everyone go check out his content. And until then, we'll see you in the lands between, I suppose.
Yeah. Thank you again. See you all later.